Turkish Grand Prix and the round 16 of this Formula One Championship in 2021. Clouds hovering above the circuit. It was a sunny day when these shots were filmed down in Istanbul, 3 times larger than the capital city of Ankara here in Turkey, and a population of 15 million. As the C4, the C3 is the medium and the C2 is the hard, but the wet weather and the intermediates are standing by because the risk of rain, according to the forecasters, is 100%. And that put a smile not just on my face, but Jenson Button as well, who's alongside me.
Because Carlos is starting from the back, whatever happens. So he's probably going to run now just to get a feel for the track and make sure everything's working okay with the car. And he's probably going to park it quite early. With Lewis, he still has to qualify as high as he can, because if he goes P1 in qualifying in Q3, he will start the race in 11th.
Yeah, here in Istanbul, where we raced in November, it was a lot colder, it was a lot wetter, and the track wasn't half as grippy as well. Things have changed a bit, but still, it's the clouds above the circuit that are dominating as the light goes green and the cars make their way out onto the circuit. Expected in 3 minutes. If the rain does come down in 3 minutes, there are going to be some at the back of the pack here that might just get a bit caught out. And Sebastian Vettel, Ted Kravitz, hasn't even left the garage yet.
He has now, as has Max Verstappen and his teammate, and just gets you on the back of the neck. That's the feeling I'm getting down here in the pit lane.
And we're seeing the queuing at the end of the lap as people try and bridge a gap between themselves and the cars in front. Lewis Hamilton's not hanging around. He's decided he doesn't want to be sitting behind the two.
Got a spinner.
The man who is starting at the back of the grid is Carlos Sainz. He's already off the track. Hamilton looks like he's off the track again. We wondered, was it going to be conditions for slick tyres? Biden won. Add Mick Schumacher to that list, and that is Verstappen's spin.
Well, mate, I tried to take it careful, but somehow it's still no good.
He's lucky.
Who was on pole, of course, in Sochi. 128.0.
Spots of rain expected now and heavier rain in 5 minutes.
So Norris, good time, 1.4 seconds ahead of Pierre Gasly. George Russell is on a decent lap. Hamilton is now starting his next flying lap and trying to get it in before the race going to the top. In the bottom 5 at the moment, Tsunoda, Leclerc, Sainz, Ricciardo and Raikkonen. Well, take Tsunoda out of that equation. He's just gone second fastest. Obviously, the track getting grippier and will dry out the more cars that go round it, but front of the race itself. Verstappen, meanwhile, 126.6 after that early spin. Problem solved for Max Verstappen as Ocon now goes 6th fastest, and Lance Stroll, who was in the bottom 5, puts himself 5th fastest overall. Sainz, Mazepin, Gasly's not the Ferrari that they think is going to start this race at the back of the grid. That's Carlos Sainz with his engine penalty. Leclerc now 7th fastest and manages to put himself out of trouble. George Russell, who was quickest about a minute and a half ago, is currently 9th fastest as Valtteri Bottas goes to the top and puts another 0.6 of a second this time, but he doesn't do his chances of getting into the next part of qualifying any good whatsoever. He's currently 13th fastest and right in the danger zone.
The biggest issue is now he's got the tyres very cold, he's got them very dirty, and to get them up to temperature on this cold circuit, we know they have to get a lap in.
Kimi Raikkonen is really struggling to get a lap time in. He's had another one deleted for exceeding track limits. The white line, by the way, defines the edge of the track this weekend, not the red and white curbs. We're on board with Carlos Sainz, making his way into the little dip at turn 5 and going off the track and wide. And as we watch the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz, someone's had a moment going through the first corner once again as Gasly now goes fastest overall. And I think it's Nikita Mazepin who's had a spin potentially down
his tyres. He's not overheating them like you normally would in a qualifying session, but yeah, that's a reasonable lap there. Obviously not as good as his teammate who's up in 3rd, Charles Leclerc, but reasonable.
Lando Norris, Max Verstappen, Nicholas...
No, new set for Checo Perez, new set for Sebastian Vettel as well. Some drivers are finding that these tyres actually overheat. Some can't get the heat in, but some are finding they overheat, and they're actually getting slower after 5 or so laps. So
tyres harder than others, so they would get the tyre warmer faster, but the degradation would be higher.
Hamilton going for another banker lap, as you can see, has gone purple in the middle sector and is on for the fastest time
over the next 4 minutes.
And that's Hamilton getting a little bit squirrely out of turn 1. And I mentioned Nikita Mazepin and his problems down at turn 1. There you go.
Even more squirrely.
Out of that bottom 5. showing his improvement and maybe the track's improvement as well.
Exactly. You know, he has a lot of confidence here, putting up pole last year. Obviously, very different conditions, but he obviously likes the place, and I think we'll see him do well here. A very greasy green track. You're going to get graining quite easily on those front tyres. That turn 8 is so tough on the tyres, especially the front right, and cause a lot of graining. Opens up the tyre quite badly.
Which could have him a lot of ramifications for the end of Q2, because if you get into Q3...
Of course, in the top teams, and they're just really struggling to get heat in these tyres. They just can't get them working. And that's a big lock-up very early in the braking zone.
Ted, down to you.
Down at McLaren, Lando Norris.
Perez, which is the car ahead, before he starts his final flying lap, and an important final flying lap because he needs to get out of that bottom 5. We're on board now with Daniel Ricciardo. It doesn't look particularly easy through turn 13. 6th fastest, still 6th fastest as Lance Stroll now goes 8th fastest overall. Behind him, Nikita Mazepin, definitely out of qualifying. He's had so many struggles throughout there. Kimi Raikkonen too. Lap times deleted are plenty for both of them. Antonio Giovinazzi still very much at risk. He's 15th fastest. Tsunoda is ahead of him, and Tsunoda goes 6th fastest, and that's a decent lap from the young Japanese. In Q2 for the first time as a Formula 1 driver. The only other time he reached Q2, he crashed at Paul Ricard and couldn't get back out on the track. Lewis Hamilton, this car, was the fastest driver, but what a lap by Mick Schumacher that was, Jensen.
It was. He should be really proud of himself.
You're not going to lift the gloom from Daniel Ricciardo's face for a while, I wouldn't have thought.
We've all been there. We've all been in that tricky situation, and it's a horrible feeling when you cross that line and you're hearing the cars that are going quicker than you, and you end up want to start on that in the race. And when you have the pace advantage of a Mercedes or a Red Bull, you can run on the medium.
Because this is the key for those that aren't with us every week in qualifying and don't know the rules as intimately as Jensen Button.
Easier these sessions, because obviously the slower cars, they have to push as hard as they can on the softest tyre, which hurts them a little bit for the race tomorrow. But anyway, excited about this session. As you can see, there's still a lot of damp patches or wet patches on the circuit, and you're up to turn 7, which is a long right-hander. It's so quick in the cars these days, and then it takes you into turn 8. Very, very long left-hander. It should be flat in qualifying. Very, very high G-force. There's 4 apexes through turn 8. He actually looks like he's cruising a little bit. I think he's trying to get the
lap. He certainly seemed to be going very slowly through there, and he's had a spin. Everyone's on the medium tyre, apart from Yuki Tsunoda, I'm led to believe. Sergio Perez on the medium tyre, but he's...
That's the difference.
You never tried a donut in a combine harvester?
Funnily enough, no, never.
I'd imagine it's great fun. Should put it on the next series at Clarkson's Farm, shouldn't they? 10.5 minutes to go. Lando Norris goes 9th fastest overall, but I think
the whole time, and he's very, very good at driving a car like that, and that's why his teammates do struggle up against him quite often. We're going through turn 8 here. As I said, the 4 apexes, you just try and get as close to all of them as you can. Sounded like it was easy flat, a little bit of touching with the car through there, and sparks normally flying, which is...
Out of Verstappen's time in that part of the track, crosses the line 4/10 clear of Max Verstappen. We saw in the dry yesterday Verstappen having problems with understeer and really struggling to get through turn 9 especially. Mercedes looked a lot more dialed in the dry, and I just wonder as we're getting...
Well, it does, Lewis, but that's what everyone is having to do. Fernando Alonso actually can get a little bit more heat into those medium tyres quicker than other cars, and so has been going very well in this session. Was P4 for a while. I think it's now dropped down to where's he dropped down? Oh no, he's gone up to P3, is he not, Crofty?
Yes.
So Alonso growing great gun.
Oh, and as I say that, he now spins not just today, but over the weekend, and that has absolutely ruined what could have been a decent lap time there for Charles Leclerc. Would have been about 6 balance, not quite right for Charles Leclerc. How he mitigates that is going to be up to him, because now the cars are in park firmway. There's not an awful lot they can do in terms of helping him from the garage. DRS wide open now.
With camber there, and then through the long turn 8. This in the race is a proper corner. It's lifting. You've got to look after those tyres, but in qualifying, you've got to keep the foot to the floor. Down to turn 9. It's been a tricky.
Russell goes 11th fastest. He's only 18 thousandths of a second outside the top 10, but he's still the wrong side of the line as far as he's concerned. Sebastian Vettel stays 12th. And Lando Norris starts a new flying lap. Stroll, who, as I say, was making up pace in the middle part of the lap, goes set of Max Verstappen. That's something else that we saw yesterday, with Verstappen struggling with handling and balance issues. Perez was actually finding the car much more to his liking.
Yeah, he's got confidence in the car when it's a little bit understeery, and I think he struggles to drive.
Stroll into turn 1, going wide, going off the track, ruining his lap. And now he's going to be looking anxiously, or his engineer is, at the timing screens, because there'll be no chance for Lance Stroll to get another lap in. This is what happened. More pace and could be quite close to the top 10 by the end of this lap. George Russell, who was third on the grid in Sochi last time out, makes his way around the final corner, and just like Charles Leclerc, oh dear, here at Istanbul, very much the right time. Ferrari got that working well. Max Verstappen goes second fastest, improves on his previous best time. Valtteri Bottas now goes second fastest as he crosses the line. Charles Leclerc puts himself into penalty, but he could yet win out in qualifying. George Russell, well, what happened, George?
Sorry, guys. No.
Yuki Tsunoda, Charles Leclerc, Sergio Perez, Fernando Alonso, Pierre Gasly, Max Verstappen, Valtteri Bottas and Lewis Hamilton, all vying for the prize, the top prize of winning through as the fastest driver in qualifying, and for the first time since they count themselves as Toro Rosso as well, which is why it's their 301st race this weekend.
Yes, as Max comes out the pit lane, he tried to leave it nice and late so he'd be out on track alone, and he's come out behind an Alpine. For
him to come out first on the track. Now, with the track drying out, so far we've seen improvements later on, and I wondered whether he would want to have been a little bit further behind in the order, or at least behind his pole position for him so far this season. Make that a provisional pole and a chance of a second now, a 1:23.0 for Valtteri Bottas. We're on board with Pierre Gasly, who put in a 30.9 for the first sector, as did Max Verstappen in...
Not pushing the tyre too hard in the first sector. I'm sure he'll be told on the radio of what Valtteri did. A little bit of a moment for Max there. It would have cost him a tenth, I would say, on the corner exit there. It's a short drag to the finish line, but
the trouble
I am wrong.
The trouble is, qualifying just goes to form the grid when the penalties have been applied.
Exactly.
So that's why the pole
I get it, Crofty, don't worry.
I know, I'm trying to apologise for being a pedant. I wouldn't do it to anyone. Who do you advise?
Exactly.
Catering?
Yeah. But anyway, let's move on from that.
It's top secret, ladies and gentlemen.
But in terms of, let's talk about downforce. Yes, when the circuit's a little green, lower downforce probably isn't the direction you would take.
Charts by a couple of tenths from his teammate Valtteri Bottas, and into the 1:22s now for Lewis Hamilton. That might take some beating. It's another new track record. We've been absolutely smashing the track records all weekend long here in Istanbul. Last year where we came, the track was very slippy indeed. Of the Mercedes that's not going to take the grid penalty, because he doesn't want to be starting behind too many cars as he looks to try and capitalise on Mercedes taking that extra engine for this weekend. Let's ride on board with Verstappen and Jenson Button.
This is a great view from the front wing. You can see the movement on the front wing and the flex through turn 3, through turn 4. Now turn 5 as you drop down the hill. A little bit of understanding.
Penalty. I'll keep reminding you because it's important. Lance Stroll goes 9th fastest overall. Pierre Gasly stayed 4th fastest, had a bad final sector, could have made a further inroads up the grid. As Hamilton crosses the line, he wins out in qualifying, but with a new internal combustion engine for the Turkish Grand Prix, he'll go back 10 places for the Sunday's grid. Charles Leclerc pops his Ferrari up into 4th.
It is, but when Lewis has that pace, I think this is the best race for him to take an engine penalty. So P11 for Lewis, which makes that race tomorrow even more exciting.
Well, the crowds like what they saw from that.